So, first of all, thank you very much that you are here and you are not queuing already for the goulash and the rice. I'm very pleased to see many. As soon as I will be able to show something, I will start. How many of you already has experience with NX? Yeah. We have one VIP here in the room. I won't point it, but I have to be very careful in what I say. No, we have a Yuri from the core team, so if you have any question and so on, he knows way beyond what I know. All right. Sure, and I lost the pointer. Yeah. Right, so today we will talk about NX generators. That is a very cool feature among all the features that NX can provide. NX generators, we will see how can help us to speed up some boilerplate and some initial steps when we create new projects. Before starting, just a few words about me. My name is Francesco Leardini. I work here in Zurich as a principal consultant and trainer at Accenture. Originally from a small city in front of the Adriatic Sea, famous for aperos on the beach, I moved here in Switzerland and I start liking hiking and the Alps. Probably a sign that I'm getting old. But that's it. Let's start about talking more about NX generators. Generators can be seen as a blueprint for our projects because they allow us to bundle some tasks that we typically execute when we create, for example, new projects. Let's think about defining configuration file for the pipeline or Docker files and other boilerplate and other common tasks that are typically very annoying, or I found them at least very annoying. Thanks to generators, we can automatize these steps and leverage their potential in order to ensure that some structure is respected every time we create a new application, for example, and we avoid eventually type mistakes or typos mistakes, naming, put it wrong, and other kind of mistakes that come when we do manual steps. I don't know about you, I don't like doing manual steps over and over. And the NX generators help us to avoid this. And by doing this, as I say, that we can avoid that a team, maybe in another country, will think about, okay, why do I have to follow this structure for our YAML file? Why don't I use a different name for the properties? Or what if I introduce a new property? Then, of course, it doesn't gonna work very well because we want to ensure that within our company, all teams follow the same naming convention and architectural patterns. Let's see now more in details how we can create a custom generator. First of all, we have to install the NX plugin package. This will allow us to start working in our workspace with the plugins. Here, for example, we can see that this is a screenshot from the NX console as a plugin for Visual Code. If we enter plugin in the input command, we see a set of instructions we can use, and all these, of course, concern NX plugins. After this, we can generate a local plugin with this instruction, and this will create for us the structure that we can use then to create the future custom generators. In here, by default, a generator is already created for us. Here we use the demo plugin as a project name, and we can either start from there on to customize that provided generator, or, as we want to do, we can create our own custom generator. In this command, our goal is to create an Angular application with a specific custom naming and custom files. Therefore, we call our generator ng-spa generator. And then we associate with the project parameter to the demo plugin. That is exactly the local plugin project we created before. Right, enough about slides. Let's see the code. So, as we can see, if I found, yeah. As we can see, we have a demo plugin project, and inside we have two folders, executors and generators. When I talk about plugin in NX Word is a npm package that provides executors and generators. Generators are used to manipulate, move, rename files within our workspace. This is very convenient when we want to provide this kind of transformation. Executors, on the other side, allow us to, as the name says, execute some actions. If we already work with NX, for example, every time we want to build or test a project, in that case, we call an executor. So we execute a specific action on our project. In here, today, we focus on the generators. And the demo plugin is the default that has been created. But then, for the sake of time, we already create our own ng-spa generator. We can see the structure later, but first of all, we can see how the NX console would greet, let's say, a user that wants to create a new application. We use the NX console, and then if I, not in Japanese, maybe it works. Yeah, it works. Even in Japanese, a great feature. So if we write a generator, and then we say, okay, I want to execute my NX generator. We can have here a UI part that provides different input fields. These input fields will be taken as input parameters to accept all kind of the dynamic parameters that we need during the execution of our generators. For example, the name of the application, we can call voxed.conf, but I have to really take it away Japanese, sorry. My wife is Japanese, and so, yeah, that conf because of that. So, again, voxed.conf. Then the prefix, we want to create an Angular application, so it's the prefix for our company or for our components. email@email.com, and then the team name. These we define, and I follow some of the requirements of my previous client that were requiring all these fields. So team name, yeah, super team. These are mandatory fields, or field that we define as mandatory that within our company everybody has to fill in order to create an application. Aside that, we have also other fields, some of them as a drop-down, so multiple values we can select for. We can say if we want to nest our application in a directory or not, and then whether we want to have other options enabled. For example, if we want to skip or not the E2E tests. Because at the end of the day, we are creating an Angular application, and therefore we take all what it counts by default. Of course, we can customize that. If we look at the terminal, we can see that NX provides us a very convenient way to first have a look at what it will be the output of this command, and not to simply or directly execute that. We can see here in the command that is invoked with all the properties that we given, we have a dry run options. What does it mean is that first we can see what is the output of the command, and then if we are happy with that, we can click on run, and then it will be really executed. So this dry run is similar to the Angular CLI dry run, won't really execute the command. In this case, we see, oh, there is an error. And this is a good thing, because our company doesn't want that anybody comes with a random name, but as a rule, we have to end up having a SPA when we create a new application. So this enable us to follow some consistency in the naming of the application in our company. And this is just a simple rule. We will see others. But it's just to let you know or let you understand the capabilities of the generators that are really simple and yet very powerful in order to leverage these kind of scenarios and fulfill many other requirements. Now that all the required fields are in, and I also fulfill this requirement, we can see that this would be the output that will create our generator. I won't click run now because I don't want to spoil it. I want to leave it at the end as a proof that what we did is working. If we go back to the code, we can see that in the schema.json file that is also created when we create a generator, we have the possibility to define all the properties that will be displayed in the UI fields that we saw before. As a default, there is just one name property. This is the first one that is created by default. But then we can define all the properties we want. We can define a type, could be a string, or could be, like in the case of the style sheet, the type could be a list, and then it would be a drop-down. Or could be a Boolean. In that case, it would be a checkbox. Plus, we can define some default values so that the field is already pre-filled, like in the case of the checkboxes or in the SAS case. Or, and this is very nice, we can define patterns. Patterns allow us to create even advanced rules thanks to the regex. In this case, I say all the application names must follow this rule, that the name should end with SPA. And right, last but not least, we have a required property. This is an array that can encapsulate all or contain all the properties that we want to make mandatory. Very simple in that sense from the naming. And this will have the star in the UI, and then we cannot leave any of them empty, otherwise the generation won't go on. The core of the whole functionality of the generators is the generator file, of course. This generator TypeScript file is also created for us and exposes or provides a default function that will be executed when we run or when we call our generator. It takes two parameters. One of them is of type tree. Tree is represent the virtual file system tree, and is very cool because not only allow us to access the existing files, but also allow us to access and manipulate files that are not saved yet on the file system, but we are transforming on the way or on the process of our the execution of our generator. This is very cool as a concept because when we run a generator, it runs as an atomic action. This is very important because if, let's say, we move or rename multiple files, we don't want that if in the middle there is an error, we end up with a solution with some files transformed and some not. Therefore, the whole execution is taken as an atomic transaction. So either everything goes well or nothing. This also allows us to keep and retain consistency. Aside that, we have also a normalized options. That is another function that is by default created when we create a generator. This is a sort of a utility functions where we get these options are all the options that we gave in the input. We can define a specific interface, and this ensures also that we can use strong types inside our generator. These are just a one-to-one mapping with the fields we saw before. And this normalized option is a very convenient function to extract and format all specific and useful properties like root directory, the project name. And as you can see, here I made an example. If I have a directory parent and the application name I gave my app, then all these properties will be initialized in that way. And of course can be used in different scenarios in different places of my generator. And here comes the nice part. So we execute the generator, the default function is called, we get these initial values nicely formatted, we create these convenient variables, and now here we can call the application generator. Application generator is a method that comes from the Narver Angular plugin. This is because inside generators, we can call other generators. So it's possible to nest different generators each other in order to achieve even complex scenarios. In this case, we want to create an Angular application. Therefore, inside our custom NX generator, we want to call the NX Angular plugin and create an application. To do that, it's very simple. We have to call this application generator method, we pass the virtual tree, and then we pass some properties that, if you are familiar with Angular CLI, they should be very common. Like every time we create a new application with Angular, we have more or less the same properties to give. So if we want to generate a routing module, if we want to use a SAS or CSS, and so on. Here we can also define, thanks to the E2E test runner, we can define whether we want or we don't want generate E2E tests. So we have a lot of freedom even to manipulate a custom default Angular application generation. So this method will create our Angular application. Afterwards, we want to take a folder as an input, and this folder contains so-called template files. In our case, this folder is within the scope of our generator, files source, but we can call whatever we want. And we use embedded JavaScript templating as a syntax to inject dynamic values and customize those files. Here, for our GitLab, or at the time, GitLab pipeline, we want to customize the YAML file with the project root, the root dir, and the application name. And then the structure, the rest of the structure remains as a kind of a backbone. If you remember, these variables come from the initial, let's say, utility variables that we initialize. So here we have root dir, project root, and so on. Of course, we can change not only YAML files, we can create, for example, custom JSON, so custom NPM scripts. We can, and this is also interesting, we can also customize other YAML file. This is also very simple, but we can see already here what are the benefits of using NX generators, because the structure is very simple. But we have already some nesting properties, some naming property conventions. And in other cases, the YAML file might be very big or very complex. So instead of having someone do this manually when we create a new application, we just execute our generator, and all these fields will be filled in a proper way and respecting all the rules or all the structure conventions that we agreed at the beginning. So we give these files as an input in our add files method. And then what the generate files method from NX does is just it takes those template files, it knows where is the target folder that eventually can be moved somewhere else, and then apply the transformation according to the AJAX syntax we used. Very simple and yet very convenient. And then there are other options. For example, one of the requirements of my previous colleague was that the default E2E folder of Angular was not good. Because of legacy reasons, we needed to have this folder called system tests. Okay? Pretty simple. So if the team that creates the new application needs the E2E test, we just execute this update method. Again, we can go and read the different values, and we can simply update the file name and move, if needed, move to another location. Again, from the NX plugin, Angular plugin, we can invoke the Angular move generator method that will do all the heavy lifting for us. Very simple yet, and very, very flexible and convenient. Yet, then we have other possibilities. Another requirement was that every time we create a new application, we update a root YAML file, so appending a specific section of YAML properties to it. And this was done automatically, so no risk that some team creates a new application and then forgets to update the root YAML file, commit, the pipeline doesn't work, and so on and so on and so on. So can really save these kind of errors and make sure that all the teams work in the same way and have a consistent structure. Good. Enough talking. Let's see if it works. I click on run. This time we want to execute the command with dry run. So this is the output of our application. As we can see, we have the apps Then we wanted to have a root dir. We have the application name. And we can already see that we should have here, here we have system test, and not the E2E as it was in the default Angular application. And these values are, of course, coming from our schema. We didn't want to skip the system tests, and we provide the root dir as a parent directory where we want to host and contain our application. Let's see, how does it look? So if we go in our apps, we can see we have a root dir. Inside there is our application, and it's called not E2E as a default, but system test. And then we have also some of the template files that have been transformed. We can see here we have the name as we set, the path is properly created for us, the team email, and so on. Package JSON as well has been correctly initialized, and all these things are automatically done. It's just one click, and it's very convenient. I use to work in a team where I was in charge to manage 50 different teams that were working with a single-page application on an average of 3 to 5 each. So it was between 150 and 180 single-page applications made with Angular. And think about, the team was distributed between Switzerland, Vietnam, and other countries. And it was very, very tough to keep consistency because sometimes there is a new joiner, it has a good idea, add another name or add another property. And of course, the pipelines were not working anymore. We introduced this solution, and from that very first day, all the newly created applications were always following the same structure, so way less headaches. And that was thanks to NX generators. Good. Any questions so far? Too hungry to make questions. Right. That was it. It was just a brief introduction on the NX generators that can do way more other advanced things. We can not only change the content of files, but we can even rename the name itself of the files, moves, and create much more advanced functionalities. Here is the GitHub repo if you feel interested to look more closer to the code or try it out, and my social media if you want to see sometimes what I bubble around on about web. That's it. Thank you very much. And yeah.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
What's the available generator? Only Angular so far?
No. Well, the generators is one possibility to create it, but it is abstract. Is not linked to a specific technology, where you can use different plugins that then bind specifically to React, Vue, and so on. If, I don't have that slide, but Java Spring Boot, yeah, there is. Because if you go on the NX website, there are officially supported NX plugins from the NX team, and then there are the community plugins from the community. Yeah, and there are. Yeah. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel unless you have a very good idea, but you have plenty of choices there. Yeah. Then if there are no other questions, I wish you a good lunch, and thank you very much for the attention.